What was supposed to be another high-profile celebrity interview quickly turned into something no one in the studio expected. The cameras were rolling. The audience sat silently. Even the production crew seemed unsure whether to stop the interview or let history unfold. As questions became sharper, emotions rose. Calm discussion gave way to confrontation, and within minutes, the atmosphere inside the studio had completely changed. By the end of the exchange, one question hung over everyone watching. Had this interview crossed the point of no return? Here's how it all unfolded. Intro: when Meghan Markle accepted the invitation to appear on Ripa and Mark Consuelos' show, expectations were high. The interview promised an opportunity to revisit many of the topics that had dominated headlines for years: her departure, from royal life, public criticism, media attention, and the personal struggles she had openly discussed. Everyone expected difficult questions, but no one expected the conversation to become intensely personal. As the interview began, Kelly welcomed Meghan warmly, while Mark maintained a calm, investigative tone. For the first several minutes, the discussion remained respectful. They talked about life after stepping away from royal duties, new projects, and adjusting to life in California. Then Mark gently shifted the conversation. His expression became more serious. "So much of your story has centered around claims involving the royal family," he began. "You've spoken publicly about conversations regarding your son's skin color. You've described feeling unsupported during one of the darkest periods of your life." He paused. "These aren't simply personal experiences anymore. They're allegations that have affected reputations around the world." The studio instantly grew quieter. Meghan's confident smile faded. "What about the damage done to me?" she replied. "What about everything my family went through?" There was emotion in her voice, but also frustration. Kelly nodded respectfully before responding. "I don't think anyone questions that your experience was painful, but when public statements involve other people, especially those who rarely respond publicly, there's also a responsibility to ensure every claim can withstand scrutiny." For a brief moment, silence. The audience waited. Meghan leaned forward. "The royal family has generations of influence," she said. "They have advisors, communications teams, and endless resources. I had one thing, my voice, and I chose to use it." The tension inside the studio became impossible to ignore. The interview changes. Mark attempted to keep the discussion balanced. "No one is saying you shouldn't speak," he explained, "but people naturally ask whether every public statement has remained consistent over time." Meghan immediately stiffened. "Are you suggesting I haven't told the truth?" Mark answered carefully. "I'm asking whether different interviews have sometimes presented different versions of the same events." That single sentence transformed the interview. The room felt noticeably colder. Even members of the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kelly spoke next. "If people notice differences between interviews, isn't it reasonable for journalists to ask about them?" Meghan's voice became firmer. "Truth hasn't changed. What changes is how much I'm willing to share." Kelly maintained steady eye contact. "But that's exactly why people have questions. If details evolve, audiences naturally wonder why." The discussion was no longer casual. It had become a debate over credibility itself. "The pressure builds." Mark tried to lower the temperature. "We're not here to attack you. We're here to understand." But Meghan no longer seemed convinced. "It doesn't feel that way. It feels like I walked into an interview where the verdict had already been decided." Kelly answered immediately. "No, it feels like accountability. If someone makes serious public accusations, journalists have an obligation to ask difficult questions." Those words landed heavily. The audience remained completely silent. Some exchanged nervous glances. Others leaned forward, unable to look away. The control room reportedly began signaling camera operators, unsure whether to continue or cut to a commercial break. Yet no one moved. Everyone sensed they were witnessing a conversation that was rapidly spiraling into something much bigger than anyone had anticipated. And the hardest questions hadn't even been asked yet. The conversation reaches a breaking point as the tension continued to build. Mark leaned forward once again. His voice remained calm, but his next question carried far more weight. Many viewers have noticed that some of your public statements have changed over time. How do you respond to those who say the details of your story have evolved? For a moment, Meghan didn't answer. She simply stared across the studio. Then she spoke. My experiences haven't changed. What changes is people's willingness to listen. Kelly nodded slightly before replying. But when details appear different in separate interviews, people naturally ask for clarification. They're not attacking you. They're looking for consistency. The audience was completely silent. No applause. No laughter. Only the sound of cameras quietly recording every second. The toughest questions. Kelly carefully shifted to one of the most widely discussed moments from Meghan's previous interviews. In one interview, she began, "You described having a private ceremony before your public wedding. Later, you explained it differently. Can you help viewers understand that?" Meghan's expression tightened. "That was a personal moment between my husband and me." Kelly answered respectfully, "I understand. But once something is shared publicly, on an international stage, people naturally ask follow-up questions." Mark added, "Public conversations invite public scrutiny. That's simply part of being a public figure." Meghan shook her head. "So privacy only matters when it benefits everyone else?" The frustration in her voice was becoming impossible to hide. The emotional defense. Meghan straightened in her chair. "For years," she said, "I stayed quiet. I followed every expectation placed on me. I tried to protect people. And when I finally spoke about my own experience, suddenly, I'm the one being questioned." Her words carried genuine emotion. Even some audience members appeared sympathetic. Mark listened carefully before responding. "No one is saying you weren't hurt. But people are also asking why certain claims surfaced years later. If something was important enough to reveal publicly, why wait?" Meghan answered without hesitation. "Because I believe staying silent was the right thing. Thought protecting everyone else mattered. But eventually I realized nobody was protecting me." The studio remained frozen. Debate over accountability. Kelly leaned slightly forward. "When difficult experiences become public conversations," she said, "they also affect everyone involved. Families, institutions, reputations. That's why people ask difficult questions." Meghan immediately responded. "So accountability only applies to me? What about everyone who contributed to my experience? What about the people who never answered for their actions?" Kelly remained composed. "Accountability applies to everyone, but today, we're talking to you." The answer landed with remarkable force. The audience barely moved. The atmosphere had become almost unbearable. The studio falls silent. Mark noticed the conversation becoming increasingly emotional. He attempted to calm the situation. "I don't think anyone here wants this to become personal. We're simply trying to understand your perspective." Meghan slowly looked from Mark to Kelly, then back again. "It doesn't feel like understanding, it feels like judgment." Kelly answered quietly, "Sometimes questions sound uncomfortable, but uncomfortable doesn't automatically make them unfair." The room became still. Even the production crew appeared hesitant to interrupt. Behind the cameras, producers reportedly debated whether the interview should pause. But the conversation continued, because everyone sensed they had reached a point where neither side intended to back down, and what happened next would completely change the tone of the interview. The conversation turns personal for several long seconds. No one spoke. The silence itself became part of the interview. Then Meghan broke it. Her voice was quieter now, but far more emotional. "You have no idea what it felt like to live under that kind of pressure. Every decision was criticized. Every headline became another battle, and every day felt like I was fighting to be heard." The audience listened intently. Kelly nodded before answering. "I won't pretend to know exactly what you experienced, but difficult experiences don't place someone beyond tough questions." Mark agreed. "People can empathize with your pain while still asking for clarity." Lund slowly shook her head. "That's easy to say when you've never lived it." Two very different perspectives. The discussion was no longer about individual events. It had become a debate over perception. Meghan insisted that sharing her story was necessary. Kelly argued that public claims naturally invite public examination. Neither side appeared willing to compromise. Mark attempted to bridge the gap. Maybe. The real issue, he suggested, is that two things can be true at once. You may genuinely feel hurt, while some viewers still have unanswered questions. For a brief moment, Meghan appeared to consider his point. Then she answered, "My problem isn't with questions. It's with the assumption that I'm being dishonest before I've even answered." Kelly responded calmly, "No one benefits when questions are avoided. The public deserves transparency." Emotions take over. The atmosphere inside the studio grew even heavier. Meghan took a slow breath. "When I spoke publicly, I wasn't trying to start the final decision." Meghan stood silently for a moment, her eyes fixed on Kelly. The studio remained frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. Mark slowly rose from his chair, hoping to calm the situation before it reached a point of no return. "I think we've all said a great deal," he began. "Maybe this is a good time to pause and collect our thoughts." But the atmosphere had already changed. Kelly looked directly across the stage. Her expression remained composed. "I think we've reached the end of this conversation," and gave a brief nod. "If that's how you feel, then I'll leave." The audience watched in complete silence. Every camera remained locked on the stage. A quiet exit. Without another word, Meghan turned and walked toward the studio exit. The sound of her footsteps echoed across the floor. No music played. No applause followed. Only silence. Mark looked toward the production team, clearly aware that the interview had taken a direction no one had anticipated. Kelly remained standing. She took a slow breath before turning back toward the audience. "Sometimes," she said calmly, "the hardest conversations are also the most uncomfortable. Our responsibility is to ask questions, and it's up to viewers to decide what they believe." The audience remained thoughtful. Some appeared surprised. Others simply reflected on everything they had just witnessed. The aftermath. As producers prepared to cut away, the atmosphere backstage was reportedly just as tense. Crew members exchanged glances. The control room worked quickly to transition the program. Everyone understood that the interview, whether viewers agreed with it or not, would immediately become the center of online discussion. Within minutes, social media exploded. Some praised the hosts for asking difficult questions. Others believed Meghan had been treated unfairly. Clips, reactions, and opinions spread rapidly across the internet. Once again, public opinion became deeply divided. Supporters on every side defended their own perspective, and the debate showed no signs of slowing down. Final thought: stories involving public figures often generate passionate reactions. People interpret the same events in very different ways. Some focus on accountability, others focus on empathy, and sometimes both conversations happen at the same time. Regardless of where viewers stand, moments like these remind us how powerful public interviews can become when difficult questions meet deeply personal experiences. In today's media landscape, every word is analyzed, every reaction is replayed, and every conversation can shape public opinion in ways no one expects. Outro: what do you think? If an interview becomes this emotional, should the host continue asking difficult questions? Or should the conversation end before emotions take over? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you enjoyed this celebrity story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in